Dr. Jamal Washington stood frozen in the airplane aisle, the captain's words still ringing in his ears, "Everyone off my aircraft." 300 passengers glared at him. None of them knew his mother might die because of what happened 30 minutes earlier, or that he'd just made airline history. Before we dive into this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. This incident changed air travel forever, and you'll want to hit that like button and subscribe right now because what happened next will show you exactly why we need to stand up against discrimination wherever we see it. The airline industry didn't see this coming. The day had started with such promise. Jamal Washington, a 42-year-old cardiac surgeon with 15 years of experience at Chicago Memorial Hospital, had flown to Atlanta to accompany his 76-year-old mother Beatrice on her return flight to Chicago. After months of waiting, Beatrice had finally secured an appointment with a specialist who might be able to treat her rare heart condition. "Mom, we're going to get you the best care possible," Jamal promised as he wheeled her through Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. The spacious terminal bustled with travelers, their rolling suitcases creating a constant background rhythm on the polished floors. Beatrice smiled weakly. Her condition had worsened over the past month, requiring precise medication dosing every 6 hours. Without it, her heart could develop potentially fatal arrhythmias. The small bag of medications never left her side, it was quite literally her lifeline. "I know you will, baby. You've always taken good care of me," she replied, patting his hand. Despite her frail appearance, Beatrice Washington had a quiet dignity about her. A retired school principal who had educated thousands of children over 4 decades, she commanded respect without asking for it. They arrived at Gate C-22 for Delta Air Express Flight 2187 with plenty of time to spare. Jamal had specifically booked first-class tickets to ensure his mother would be comfortable during the 2-hour flight. "Pre-boarding will begin shortly for passengers needing special assistance," announced the gate agent. When the announcement came, Jamal gently guided his mother toward the gate. That's when they first encountered Tiffany Bennett. The 34-year-old flight attendant stood at the entrance to the jet bridge, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, her makeup impeccable. Her welcoming smile visibly faltered when Jamal and Beatrice approached. "Boarding passes and ID, please," she said, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with the white couple who had just passed through. Jamal handed over their documents. "My mother needs to take medication during the flight. She has a medical condition." Tiffany barely glanced at them. "Everyone has their problems. Just board quickly, we're on a schedule." Jamal felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the sensation he'd experienced countless times when facing casual discrimination. But today wasn't about him, it was about getting his mother to her appointment safely. He said nothing, guiding Beatrice down the jet bridge. Once aboard, another flight attendant directed them to their seats in the 3rd row. Beatrice settled in by the window while Jamal stored their small carry-on in the overhead compartment. He deliberately kept his mother's medication bag out, placing it on her lap. Tiffany Bennett appeared beside them almost immediately. "That needs to go under the seat or in the overhead compartment," she said, pointing to the medication bag. "This contains my mother's heart medication," Jamal explained politely. "She needs to have it accessible at all times. It's a medical necessity." "I don't care what's in it. FAA regulations require all personal items to be stowed during takeoff and landing." Tiffany's voice carried through the cabin, drawing attention from nearby passengers. Jamal noticed a white businessman across the aisle with a laptop bag at his feet. Tiffany had walked right past him without comment. 2 rows ahead, an older white woman held a large purse on her lap. Again, no comment from Tiffany. "I understand the regulations," Jamal said, lowering his voice. "But this is medically necessary equipment. The Air Carrier Access Act allows for accommodations in such cases." Tiffany's eyes narrowed. "Are you telling me how to do my job? The bag goes under the seat, or you can take another flight." Beatrice reached for her son's hand. "It's okay, Jamal. I'll put it under the seat. I can reach it if I need to. Reluctantly, Jamal helped his mother stow the bag under the seat in front of her, making sure it was positioned where she could easily access it. As other passengers continued boarding, Jamal overheard Tiffany speaking to another flight attendant. "Those people always think the rules don't apply to them," she muttered, just loud enough for him to hear. The plane filled quickly. Just before the doors closed, Tiffany returned to their row. "Your bag is sticking out too far," she said to Beatrice. "Push it all the way under." Beatrice leaned forward with difficulty, trying to reach the bag. "I'm sorry, but I need to be able to reach it quickly if, all the way under, or I'll have to remove it," Tiffany interrupted. Jamal intervened. "My mother has a heart condition that requires medication every 6 hours. If she can't reach it..." "Sir, if you continue to be disruptive, I'll have to ask the captain to remove you from this flight." Tiffany's threat hung in the air between them. A few passengers nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. No one spoke up. "Fine," Jamal said through gritted teeth, pushing the bag further under the seat. "But I want to speak to the captain about this. This is discrimination, plain and simple." "Accusing me of discrimination? That's rich." Tiffany walked away, her back stiff with indignation. As the safety demonstration began, Jamal checked his watch. His mother would need her next dose in 2 hours, right around their scheduled landing time. Cutting it close, but manageable. What he didn't know was that the nightmare was just beginning. Flight 2187 climbed smoothly through the clouds, leaving Atlanta behind. The seatbelt sign pinged off, and passengers began adjusting in their seats, some reaching for books or tablets. Beatrice Washington sat quietly by the window, her eyes closed, conserving her energy. Jamal watched her with concern. The stress of the confrontation had taken a toll, her skin had a grayish tinge that worried him. As a cardiologist, he recognized the subtle signs of cardiac strain. "Are you feeling okay, Mom?" he asked softly. Beatrice opened her eyes. "Just tired, baby. I'll be fine once I take my next dose. That's not for another 2 hours. Try to rest until then." 45 minutes into the flight, Beatrice shifted uncomfortably. "Jamal, I'm feeling a little irregular. I think I should take half a dose now." Alarm bells rang in Jamal's mind. His mother never complained unless something was seriously wrong. He immediately bent down to reach for the medication bag under the seat. It wasn't there. Jamal checked again, running his hand through the empty space. "Mom, are you sure you didn't move it?" "No, baby. I haven't moved since we took off." He checked under his own seat. Nothing. A cold feeling spread through his chest as he flagged down a passing flight attendant, not Tiffany, but a younger woman named Sarah. "Excuse me, my mother's medication bag seems to be missing from under her seat. It's extremely important, it contains heart medication she needs." Sarah frowned. "Let me check with the rest of the crew. Maybe someone moved it during takeoff." As Sarah walked away, Jamal turned to the passengers seated behind them. "Excuse me, did you happen to see anyone remove a small black medical bag from under this seat?" The middle-aged white couple exchanged glances. The woman leaned forward. "Actually, yes. The blonde flight attendant took it right after takeoff. She reached under and pulled it out when you were looking at something in the safety card. She didn't say anything to you about it," her husband added. "We thought it was strange, but figured maybe you had asked her to store it somewhere." Jamal's pulse quickened. He pressed the call button repeatedly, his finger jabbing the small plastic circle with increasing force. No one came. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Beatrice's breathing had become more labored, her hand occasionally fluttering to her chest. "Jamal," she whispered. "I need my medication." He pressed the call button again, holding it down continuously. Finally, Tiffany appeared, her expression one of practiced annoyance. "Is there a problem?" she asked, as if addressing a petulant child. "Yes, there's a problem," Jamal said, struggling to keep his voice level. "My mother's medication bag is missing from under her seat. The passengers behind us saw you remove it. She needs that medication now." Tiffany's expression didn't change. "Oh, that. I disposed of it during takeoff. It was blocking the pathway to the exit row." The words hit Jamal like a physical blow. "You what?" "That bag contains critical heart medication my mother needs to stay alive." "Sir, lower your voice. I'm just doing my job enforcing FAA regulations." "Where is it now?" "We need it immediately. It's been disposed of with the trash from the first beverage service." Tiffany's tone remained coldly professional. "You should have properly declared any medications before boarding." Beatrice made a small gasping sound, her hand clutching at her chest. Jamal recognized the signs immediately, the beginning of an arrhythmia episode. "My mother is having a cardiac event right now because of what you've done," Jamal said, his medical training kicking in. "I'm a cardiologist. I need that medication found immediately, and I need the emergency medical kit brought here now." Tiffany took a step back. "Sir, are you threatening me? I need you to calm down." Around them, passengers had begun to notice the commotion. Several had their phones out, recording the interaction. "I'm not threatening anyone," Jamal said clearly for the benefit of the recordings. "I am Dr. Jamal Washington, Chief of Cardiology at Chicago Memorial Hospital, and I am informing you that my elderly mother is having a cardiac event because you removed and disposed of her life-saving medication. This is now a medical emergency." Beatrice's breathing became more labored. A thin sheen of sweat appeared on her forehead. A white woman across the aisle stood up. "I'm a nurse. Can I help?" "Yes, please," Jamal said. "My mother has Brugada syndrome. She's going into an arrhythmia without her medication." The nurse, who would later identify herself as Emily Parker, moved quickly to Beatrice's side, checking her pulse. "Her heart rate is irregular and elevated," Emily confirmed. "She needs medical attention." Tiffany had backed away, speaking in hushed tones into her handset. More passengers were filming now, the confrontation drawing attention throughout the first-class cabin and beyond. "Where is the emergency medical kit?" Jamal demanded of another flight attendant who had approached. "I'll get it right away," the second attendant promised, hurrying to the front galley. Tiffany returned, her face now a mask of professional concern that didn't reach her eyes. "The captain has been informed of a disturbance in the cabin. He's asking what's happening." "What's happening," Jamal said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear, "is that you removed my mother's life-saving medication without our knowledge, disposed of it against FAA medical accommodation regulations, and now she's having a potentially fatal cardiac event as a direct result." The overhead speaker crackled to life. "This is Captain Thomas Reynolds speaking. We have reports of an unruly passenger situation. I need everyone to remain calm and in their seats while the cabin crew handles the situation." Jamal stared in disbelief at the speaker, then at Tiffany, who wouldn't meet his eyes. "Unruly passenger," he repeated. "My mother is having a medical emergency because your flight attendant threw away her medication." Multiple voices rose in support. "We saw her take the bag. This is outrageous. The doctor is trying to help his mother." Emily Parker spoke up clearly. "Captain, this is a genuine medical emergency. The patient needs immediate medical attention and emergency landing. I am a registered nurse verifying this situation." The second flight attendant returned with the emergency medical kit. Jamal took it, quickly assessing the contents. "This isn't enough," he said. "She needs her specific medication. Without it." He didn't finish the sentence, focusing instead on what he could do with the limited supplies available. Tiffany hovered nearby, now visibly nervous as the situation spiraled beyond her control. "Sir, I need you to return to your seat." "My mother is having a medical emergency that you caused," Jamal replied without looking up. "I'm not going anywhere." As he administered what care he could to stabilize his mother, the tension in the cabin continued to escalate. Passengers from economy had begun standing in the aisles to witness the confrontation, many with phones recording. The captain's voice came over the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an onboard medical situation, we will be diverting to Cincinnati/Northern Kentucky International Airport. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." Jamal looked up from his mother. "Ask the captain if he's called ahead for medical assistance on the ground," he instructed the second flight attendant. "We need paramedics at the gate the moment we land." The flight attendant nodded and hurried to the cockpit phone. Emily Parker helped monitor Beatrice's condition as the plane began its descent. "Her pulse is still irregular, but she's hanging in there," she told Jamal. "You're doing everything you can." "Thank you," Jamal said, the professional calm he maintained in medical emergencies the only thing keeping him from breaking down. He turned to address Tiffany, who stood at the edge of the gathering crowd. "I want to be absolutely clear about what's happened here. You deliberately removed a clearly marked medical bag containing life-saving medication from an elderly woman with a known heart condition. You did this without informing us, and then disposed of the medication. When confronted, you delayed getting medical assistance. Every second of this has been recorded by multiple passengers." Tiffany's face flushed red. "I was following protocol for items blocking emergency access." "You're twisting what happened." "The truth is on video," Jamal replied. "And when we land, you'll have to explain to the paramedics, the airline, and potentially to the courts why my mother's life was endangered by your actions." The plane began its final approach to Cincinnati. What should have been a routine flight had transformed into a nightmare at 30,000 feet, but the worst was yet to come. The aircraft descended through clouds toward Cincinnati, the atmosphere inside the cabin thick with tension. Beatrice Washington's condition had stabilized somewhat, but Jamal knew this was temporary. Without her specific medication, the dangerous cardiac arrhythmia could return at any moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Thomas Reynolds. We're making our final approach to Cincinnati. All passengers must remain seated with seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants, prepare for landing." Jamal checked his mother's pulse again. Still irregular, but not immediately life-threatening. Emily Parker, the nurse who had come to their aid, remained by Beatrice's side, monitoring her breathing. "Has anyone confirmed medical assistance will be waiting?" Jamal asked the second flight attendant, Sarah. Sarah looked uncomfortable. I'm not sure." Tiffany was handling the communication with the captain. Jamal's stomach tightened. He'd worked in emergency medicine long enough to know that preparation was everything. Minutes, even seconds, could make the difference between life and death. "I need to speak to the captain," he insisted. "That's not possible during landing," Tiffany interjected, appearing beside them. "Everyone needs to be seated now. Did you request emergency medical services to meet the plane?" Jamal demanded. Tiffany's expression remained impassive. "The situation is under control. The captain has notified ground staff of our arrival." "That's not what I asked. Did you specifically request paramedics for a cardiac emergency?" "Sir, you need to return to your seat immediately." Tiffany's voice had taken on a performative quality, as if she were playing to an audience. "You're interfering with crew duties." Emily Parker spoke up. "As a medical professional, I can confirm this woman needs immediate medical attention when we land. Has EMS been specifically requested?" Tiffany ignored her, addressing Jamal instead. "If you don't return to your seat right now, I'll have to report continued non-compliance to the captain." A white businessman in a nearby seat stood up. "For God's sake, the man is trying to save his mother's life. Can't you answer a simple question?" "Sir, you need to sit down as well," Tiffany responded. The plane touched down with a slight bump, taxiing toward the terminal. Jamal used the brief window of opportunity to check his mother's vitals again. Her pulse was weakening, her skin taking on a worrying bluish tinge. "Mom, stay with me," he whispered. "Help is coming." As the aircraft came to a complete stop, Captain Reynolds's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at Cincinnati/Northern Kentucky International Airport. Please remain seated until further instructions. We have a situation that requires attention from local authorities." Jamal's heart sank at the phrasing. Not medical emergency, but a situation requiring authorities. He'd heard similar coded language throughout his life, language that often preceded unwarranted escalation when black individuals were involved. The cabin door opened, and Jamal expected to see paramedics rushing in. Instead, four airport police officers entered the aircraft, their expressions grim. "What's going on?" Emily asked. "Where are the paramedics? This woman needs medical attention." The officers moved directly toward Jamal, ignoring Beatrice entirely. "Sir, we need you to come with us," the lead officer stated. Jamal stared in disbelief. "My mother is having a cardiac emergency. She needs immediate medical attention. We were called about a passenger threatening flight crew," the officer continued. "You need to come with us now." Around them, passengers erupted in protest. "He didn't threaten anyone. He's a doctor helping his mother." The flight attendant threw away her medicine. Phones were still recording, capturing every moment of the confrontation. Emily Parker stepped between Jamal and the officers. "I'm a registered nurse. This woman is in cardiac distress because her medication was confiscated and disposed of by the flight attendant. She needs emergency medical attention immediately. There has been no threatening behavior from her son, only attempts to get medical help." One of the officers hesitated, taking in the scene, an elderly black woman clearly in medical distress, the organized medical supplies, and the numerous passengers recording and protesting. Tiffany pushed forward. He was aggressive and non-compliant with safety instructions. He disrupted the entire flight. "That's a lie." A passenger's voice rang out. Multiple others joined in, their phones held high, recording everything. The lead officer spoke into his radio. "We need medical assistance at gate B17 immediately. Possible cardiac emergency." Only then did Jamal allow himself a moment of relief. But it was short-lived. "Sir, once medical personnel arrive, we'll still need to speak with you about the reported incident," the officer added. Captain Thomas Reynolds emerged from the cockpit, a tall man with gray temples and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. He surveyed the scene with a frown. "What's the delay here? We need to get this aircraft back in the air as soon as possible." "Captain," Jamal addressed him directly, "your flight attendant removed and disposed of my mother's life-saving heart medication without our knowledge. She's now in cardiac distress as a direct result. We need her transported to the nearest hospital immediately, and we need to locate her medication." The captain's eyes narrowed as he looked from Jamal to Beatrice, then to Tiffany. Ms. Bennett reported a passenger becoming aggressive and threatening when asked to comply with safety regulations. "That's not what happened," Emily interjected. "I witnessed the entire interaction." Dr. Washington identified himself as a physician and asked for medical assistance when he discovered his mother's medication had been taken. At no point was he threatening. More passengers voiced their agreement. "We all saw it. Check the videos. The flight attendant is lying." Captain Reynolds seemed taken aback by the unified response from the passengers. Before he could reply, two paramedics finally arrived, pushing through the crowd with their equipment. 76-year-old female with Brugada syndrome, Jamal reported immediately, slipping into his professional role. Presenting with cardiac arrhythmia, possible beginning of ventricular fibrillation. She needs quinidine specifically, which was in her medication bag that was disposed of by your flight attendant. The paramedics went to work immediately, attaching a portable ECG monitor to Beatrice. Definite arrhythmia, the lead paramedic confirmed. We need to transport her now. I'm coming with her, Jamal stated firmly. I'm her son and a cardiologist. The police officer shook his head. We still need to question you about the incident. Emily Parker stepped forward again. I'll provide my full statement as a witness, but Dr. Washington needs to accompany his mother to the hospital. This is a life-threatening situation that he did nothing to cause. Captain Reynolds cleared his throat. The medication bag in question was removed as per FAA regulations about items blocking emergency access. That's not true, Jamal responded. The Air Carrier Access Act specifically allows for medical accommodations. The bag was properly stowed under the seat, as multiple witnesses can attest. Regardless, the captain continued, what's done is done. The item has been disposed of. You're saying you won't even try to locate critical, life-saving medication that your employee wrongfully confiscated? Jamal's voice rose in disbelief. The captain's expression hardened. Sir, your tone is exactly the problem, Ms. Bennett reported. Around them, passengers continued recording, their expressions ranging from shock to outrage. My mother could die because of actions taken by your crew, Jamal said, his voice now deadly calm. And instead of helping, you're concerned about my tone. The paramedics had stabilized Beatrice enough to move her. We need to go now, the lead paramedic insisted. As they prepared to transfer Beatrice to a stretcher, Tiffany approached Captain Reynolds, speaking in a low voice. Jamal caught fragments, formal complaint, aggressive behavior, felt unsafe. The situation had reached a critical junction. Beatrice needed to get to a hospital immediately. The police wanted to detain Jamal for questioning. The airline crew was already constructing their narrative to shield themselves from responsibility. I'm going with my mother, Jamal stated with the quiet authority he used in the operating room. That is non-negotiable. I will provide contact information for my attorney, who can address any further questions. The lead officer hesitated, looking between Jamal, the clearly ill elderly woman, and the dozens of passengers still recording everything. Let him go with his mother, a voice called from the crowd. Others joined in, the chorus of support growing louder. Fine, the officer relented. But we'll need your contact information, and this isn't over. As the paramedics began moving Beatrice toward the exit, Captain Reynolds addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for this delay. Once the aircraft is cleared, we'll resume our journey to Chicago. Please remain seated. Jamal looked back at the passengers who had witnessed everything, many of whom had stood up for them. Thank you, he said simply. Please share those videos. The truth needs to be told. As he followed the paramedics carrying his mother, Jamal heard the captain instructing the remaining passengers to stay in their seats for the continuation of the flight. What none of them realized was that Dr. Jamal Washington had no intention of allowing that flight to depart, not when his mother's life hung in the balance because of their actions, and not when justice remained unserved. Do you believe the captain and flight attendant should be held accountable for what happened to Beatrice? Type 1 in the comments if you think they should face consequences for their actions. And if you're as outraged as I am about this incident, hit that like button and subscribe to see how Dr. Washington fought back against this blatant discrimination. What would you have done if you were a passenger witnessing this unfold? Would you have spoken up like Emily Parker did? The story is far from over, and what Jamal does next will change airline policies forever. As the paramedics wheeled Beatrice Washington through the terminal toward the waiting ambulance, Jamal strode alongside, one hand holding his mother's, the other clutching his phone. Already, his mind was racing, calculating their next moves and the battle that lay ahead. Vital signs are stabilizing, one paramedic noted, checking the portable monitor. But we need to get her on proper medication ASAP. University Hospital is our best bet, Jamal said. They'll have the specific medications she needs. I can call ahead to their cardiology department. Already on it, the paramedic confirmed. ETA 12 minutes. As they approached the exit doors, a voice called out behind them. Dr. Washington. Wait. Jamal turned to see one of the airport police officers, a younger black man, jogging to catch up with them. Sir, I need you to come with me for questioning, the officer said loudly, for the benefit of his colleagues watching from a distance. Then, lowering his voice, he added, I'm Officer Andre Johnson. I recognized you from the Cardiac Innovation Conference in Detroit last year. You gave the keynote. Jamal blinked in surprise. Look, Andre continued quietly, they're taking you to a security office for questioning instead of letting you go with your mother. I can't stop that, but you should know what's happening. He glanced over his shoulder. The flight attendant has filed a formal complaint against you. Serious allegations. What kind of allegations? Jamal asked, his stomach nodding. Claims you were aggressive, made her fear for her safety. Says you might have been under the influence of something because you were acting erratically. Andre's expression conveyed exactly what he thought of these claims. It's all in her written statement. That's absurd, Jamal said. Dozens of passengers witnessed what really happened. Andre nodded. And they're posting videos online right now. It's already starting to blow up on social media. He showed Jamal his phone screen, where a video titled, Racist Flight Attendant Endangers Black Woman's Life, already had thousands of views. The paramedics had reached the ambulance. Dr. Washington, we need to go, one called. Jamal felt torn in half, his professional instinct to stay with his patient warring with his son's heart desperate to stay with his mother. Mom, he said, leaning close to Beatrice. These officers need to ask me some questions. I'll meet you at the hospital as soon as I can. You're in good hands. Beatrice's eyes fluttered open. Don't you worry about me, baby. You do what you need to do. I raised you to stand your ground. With a final squeeze of her hand, Jamal stepped back, allowing the paramedics to load his mother into the ambulance. I'll be there soon, he promised as the doors closed. Andre led him back into the terminal, where 3 other officers waited. This way, sir, one of them said, gesturing toward a non-public corridor. As they walked, Andre murmured, they're taking you to the security office. I'll try to help where I can. The security office was a stark room with bare walls, a metal table, and 4 chairs. 2 airport security officials waited inside along with another police officer. Jamal was directed to sit. Dr. Washington, I'm Security Chief Vance Morgan, said an older white man with a buzz cut. We need to discuss the incident on Delta Air Express Flight 2187. My mother is being transported to the hospital without me because your flight attendant disposed of her life-saving medication, Jamal replied evenly. I think that should be your primary concern. Morgan slid a document across the table. This is Ms. Bennett's statement about what transpired. I'd like you to read it and respond. Jamal scanned the statement, his blood pressure rising with each fabricated line. According to Tiffany Bennett, he had become immediately confrontational during boarding, had refused to comply with basic safety instructions, had made threatening gestures, and had appeared to be under the influence of something that made him erratic and potentially dangerous. Most egregiously, she claimed she had offered multiple times to retrieve the medication, but that Jamal had refused in order to create a scene. This is fiction, Jamal said, pushing the paper away. Every word of it. And there are dozens of witnesses and videos to prove it. Sir, interfering with a flight crew is a federal offense, Morgan stated. These are serious allegations. Yes, they are, Jamal agreed. Which is why it's fortunate that nearly every passenger on that plane was recording what actually happened. Ms. Bennett confiscated and disposed of clearly marked medical supplies against FAA regulations. When confronted, she lied and delayed medical care for my mother. Now she's filed a false report to cover her actions. Andre Johnson, who had positioned himself by the door, caught Jamal's eye and subtly held up his phone, showing more social media notifications pouring in. Dr. Washington, Morgan continued, where were you and your mother traveling from and to? From Atlanta to Chicago. My mother had an appointment with a specialist for her heart condition tomorrow morning. Jamal checked his watch. An appointment she'll now miss because of this situation. And what is your occupation? I'm chief of cardiology at Chicago Memorial Hospital. Jamal reached for his phone. I'd like to contact my attorney now. In a moment, Morgan replied. First, we need to. The door opened, and another security officer entered, whispering something to Morgan. The security chief's expression shifted. Excuse me a moment, he said, stepping outside with the messenger. Andre moved closer to Jamal. Videos are going viral, he whispered. The airline is getting hammered online. Hashtag medicine thrown away is trending. Jamal seized the moment to call his attorney, Sofia Rodriguez. She answered on the second ring. Jamal. I just saw a video of you on a plane. What's happening? Quickly, Jamal explained the situation. They've separated me from my mother. She's being transported to University Hospital while I'm being detained for questioning. The flight attendant has filed a false report claiming I was threatening. I'm on my way to Cincinnati now, Sophia replied immediately. Don't answer any more questions until I arrive. Are you under arrest? Not formally, no. Then you're free to leave. Tell them your attorney has advised you not to answer further questions until she arrives. When Morgan returned, his demeanor had changed subtly. Dr. Washington, we've received some additional information about the incident. My attorney has advised me not to answer any more questions until she arrives, Jamal stated firmly. Unless I'm under arrest, I'll be leaving now to join my mother at the hospital. Morgan hesitated. You're not under arrest at this time, but we strongly encourage you to cooperate with our investigation. I'll cooperate fully once my attorney is present and my mother's medical needs are addressed, Jamal replied, standing. Now, can someone direct me to the taxi stand, or will I need to call a rideshare? The tension in the room was palpable. Morgan clearly wanted to detain him but was reassessing the situation in light of whatever new information had come in. Officer Johnson can escort you to the main terminal, he finally said. We'll be in touch about continuing this interview. As Andre let him out, Jamal asked quietly, what changed? Why the sudden shift? The videos, Andre replied under his breath. They're seeing what really happened, and it doesn't match the flight attendant's story at all. Plus, a passenger identified herself as a nurse and gave an interview to someone in the terminal. She backed up your version completely. In the main concourse, Andre paused. Dr. Washington, there's something else you should know. The flight is preparing to depart with all the passengers still on board. Jamal stopped walking. They're continuing the flight. After what happened? Andre nodded. Scheduled to depart in 30 minutes. They're just waiting for some paperwork. A cold determination settled over Jamal. Throughout his career, he had encountered discrimination in various forms, subtle slights, passive-aggressive comments, patients requesting a different kind of doctor. He had always responded with professionalism and restraint, believing that excellence was the best response to prejudice. But this was different. His mother's life had been endangered by blatant discrimination, and now the airline was attempting to whisk away the witnesses and evidence as if nothing had happened. I need to make some calls, Jamal said. First, he called University Hospital, using his credentials to speak directly with the attending cardiologist about his mother's condition. The news wasn't good. Beatrice's heart had sustained stress that could have long-term consequences. Without her specific medication, they were using alternatives that weren't as effective for her condition. Next, he called his colleague Dr. Harrison Ford, chief of surgery at Chicago Memorial. Harrison, I need a favor. Remember Congressman Williams? Your wife's cousin who had the valve replacement last year? I need his direct number. It's an emergency. Within minutes, Jamal had the contact information for not only Congressman Williams but also for Jason Torres, a senior official at the Federal Aviation Administration, who happened to be one of Jamal's patients. Standing in the middle of the bustling airport terminal, Dr. Jamal Washington made the call that would change everything. Mr. Torres? This is Dr. Washington. I apologize for calling your personal number, but there's a situation involving passenger safety and medical negligence on Delta Air Express Flight 2187 currently at Cincinnati Airport. The aircraft is preparing to depart with all witnesses still on board, and I believe that constitutes a serious safety risk and potential obstruction of justice. Have you ever witnessed discrimination but felt powerless to stop it? Type 1 in the comments if you've seen racial bias in action and wished you could do something about it. Hit that like button if you believe Dr. Washington is right to fight back against this injustice. And subscribe to find out exactly how he grounds an entire airplane and changes airline policy forever. Would you have the courage to stand up like he did? The most shocking part of this story is still to come. Jason Torres of the Federal Aviation Administration listened intently as Jamal outlined what had transpired on Flight 2187. Unlike the airport security officers, Torres asked pointed, relevant questions that cut to the heart of the matter. So to confirm, Dr. Washington, the flight attendant removed clearly marked medical supplies without informing you, disposed of life-saving medication, and then filed a false report when called out on it? That's correct, Jamal confirmed. My mother is currently in University Hospital because of these actions. And now they're attempting to depart with all the witnesses still on board. Give me the flight details again, Torres requested. Jamal could hear typing in the background. Delta Air Express 2187, diverted to Cincinnati, now preparing to continue to Chicago. Yes. Scheduled to depart in approximately 20 minutes. Stay on the line, Torres instructed. The call went silent for several minutes. When Torres returned, his voice had taken on an official tone. Dr. Washington, I've initiated an immediate safety review of this flight. It will not be departing until we complete our preliminary investigation. Relief washed over Jamal. Thank you. I'll need your contact information and your current location at the airport. I'm dispatching FAA personnel to interview witnesses before they disembark. Jamal provided the requested information, then added, Mr. Torres, I should inform you that I believe this incident constitutes a civil rights violation as well as medical negligence. The flight attendant's actions appeared to be racially motivated, as white passengers with similar items were not approached. Noted, Torres replied. The FAA takes all forms of discrimination seriously, as they can impact the safety culture of flight operations. We'll be coordinating with other relevant agencies. After ending the call, Jamal checked the flight status on his phone. The departure time for Flight 2187 had changed from on time to delayed, status pending. He allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction before hailing a rideshare to University Hospital. 20 minutes later, Jamal strode through the emergency department doors, identifying himself to the receptionist. I'm Dr. Jamal Washington. My mother, Beatrice Washington, was brought in with cardiac arrhythmia. Dr. Washington, yes. The team is expecting you. She's in trauma 3. He found his mother connected to multiple monitors, and 4 drip in her arm. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow but steady. Dr. Alicia Martinez looked up from the chart she was reviewing. Dr. Washington, she greeted him. We've stabilized her for now, but her cardiac enzyme levels are concerning. Has she had any additional arrhythmia episodes? 2 minor ones since arrival. We're using amiodarone as a substitute for her regular medication, but it's not ideal for her specific condition. Jamal checked the monitors himself, years of cardiology practice allowing him to instantly assess his mother's condition. The readings confirmed his fears, Beatrice had suffered damage to her heart muscle during the prolonged period without her medication. "We need to get her transferred to Chicago Memorial as soon as she's stable enough," he said. "My team there is familiar with her case." "Agreed," Dr. Martinez nodded. "But I wouldn't recommend transport for at least 24 hours. The stress could trigger another episode." Beatrice's eyes fluttered open. "Jamal. Is that you, baby?" He moved to her side, taking her hand. "I'm here, Mom. You're going to be okay. Did they let you go?" "Everything's being handled," he assured her. "You just focus on resting." As Beatrice drifted back to sleep, Jamal's phone vibrated with an incoming call from Andre Johnson. "Dr. Washington, you need to know what's happening at the airport," Andre said without preamble. "The FAA just grounded the entire flight. Agents are interviewing all the passengers. The airline executives are having a meltdown." "Good," Jamal replied. "They should be concerned." "It's more than that," Andre continued. "Videos from the flight are everywhere. #Justice for Beatrice is trending nationwide. News crews are showing up at the airport." Jamal hadn't anticipated this level of public attention, but he welcomed it. Too often, incidents like this were buried in corporate bureaucracy and confidential settlements. "There's more," Andre added. "The flight attendant and captain have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. And..." He lowered his voice, "I shouldn't be telling you this, but I overheard that this isn't the first complaint against that flight attendant. There's a history." "Thank you for letting me know," Jamal said sincerely. "My mother almost died because of racial profiling," he continued. "People need to understand that discrimination isn't just offensive, it can be deadly." After ending the call, Jamal checked his email to find a message from Sofia Rodriguez, his attorney. Arrived at Cincinnati Airport. FAA conducting full investigation. Multiple passengers have provided statements and video evidence supporting your account. Will come to hospital after finishing interviews. Do not speak to airline representatives or media without me present. Over the next hour, as Jamal sat by his mother's bedside, his phone buzzed constantly with notifications. The incident had struck a chord, particularly within the African American community, where stories of medical discrimination resonated deeply. Videos from the flight had been viewed millions of times, with commenters expressing outrage at the flight attendant's actions and the airline's response. A text from Dr. Harrison Ford provided further insight, CNN running the story. Airline stock down 7% already. CEO trying to do damage control. Sofia Rodriguez arrived at the hospital just after 6 in the evening, her normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled from rushing between locations. The FAA has grounded the flight indefinitely, she reported. All passengers have been rebooked on other flights after giving statements. The evidence against the airline is overwhelming. How's my mother's case looking legally? Jamal asked. Sofia's expression turned serious. It's one of the strongest civil rights and medical negligence cases I've ever seen. Multiple witnesses, video evidence, clear discrimination, life-threatening consequences. But Jamal. She hesitated. What is it? Delta Air Express's legal team has already reached out. They want to discuss a settlement. A substantial one, with an NDA. Jamal looked at his mother's sleeping form, the monitors tracking her weakened heart. No amount of money could undo the damage done to her. They want to bury this, he said. Make it go away quietly. That's their playbook, Sofia agreed. And I have to tell you, the offer they're floating is significant. Not interested, Jamal replied without hesitation. This isn't about money. It's about accountability and preventing this from happening to someone else. A nurse entered to check Beatrice's vitals, and Jamal stepped outside the room with Sofia to continue their conversation. There's something else you should know, Sofia said, lowering her voice. The Department of Transportation has initiated a separate investigation into discriminatory practices at Delta Air Express. Your incident was the tipping point, but they've apparently received multiple complaints over the past year. So we're not the only ones, Jamal said, unsurprised but still disheartened. Not by a long shot. And now people are speaking up. Your stand is encouraging others to come forward with their experiences. Jamal's phone rang, the hospital administrator from Chicago Memorial. Dr. Washington, we're arranging an air ambulance to transport your mother once she's stable enough to fly. The hospital is covering all costs. Thank you, Jamal said, genuinely moved by the gesture. That means a lot. As evening turned to night, Jamal maintained his vigil by his mother's bedside. The monitors showed slight improvement, but Dr. Martinez's assessment remained cautious. The next 24 hours are critical, she told him. The stress on her heart was significant. Around midnight, Beatrice awoke more fully, her eyes clearer than before. Jamal, she said, her voice weak but determined. What happened on that plane? Don't worry about that now, Mom. Just focus on getting stronger. Beatrice shook her head slightly. No, baby. Listen to me. What happened there, it's been happening all my life. Different versions of the same story. People looking at the color of my skin and deciding I don't deserve the same care, the same respect. Jamal held her hand, his throat tight with emotion. But you, she continued, you did what I always taught you. Stand your ground. Speak truth. Use the education and position you've earned to make things right, not just for yourself but for others. I learned from the best, Jamal said, smiling at his mother. Promise me something, Beatrice said, her grip surprisingly strong. Don't let them buy your silence. Some things are more important than money. I already turned down their offer, Jamal assured her. This isn't going away quietly. Beatrice nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes again. Jamal remained by her side, thinking about the battle ahead. The airline had resources, lawyers, PR teams, but he had truth, evidence, and a growing public demand for accountability. His phone lit up with a text from Andre Johnson, just so you know, your story has gone international. BBC and Al Jazeera are covering it now. This is bigger than you might realize. Jamal looked at his sleeping mother, thinking about how a routine flight had transformed into a fight for justice. He had grounded an entire flight, initiated a federal investigation, and sparked a national conversation about discrimination in healthcare and transportation. And this was just the beginning. The next morning dawned with Beatrice Washington showing signs of improvement. Her vital signs had stabilized, though Dr. Martinez remained cautious about her prognosis. The damage to her heart muscle is concerning, she explained to Jamal as they reviewed the latest test results. She'll need careful monitoring and possibly more aggressive treatment once she's back in Chicago. Jamal nodded, processing the information both as a son and as a cardiologist. I want to get her home as soon as it's safe to transport her. Another 24 hours, minimum, Dr. Martinez advised. We need to ensure she's stable enough for the air ambulance transport. Outside Beatrice's hospital room, the situation was evolving rapidly. Sofia Rodriguez arrived early, carrying coffee and a grim expression. Delta Air Express has issued a statement, she said, handing Jamal a tablet with the airline's press release. Delta Air Express takes all passenger concerns seriously, the statement read. We are investigating an incident on Flight 2187 and have placed the involved crew members on administrative leave pending the outcome. The safety and well-being of our passengers is our highest priority. Generic corporate damage control, Jamal observed. No acknowledgement of what actually happened. They're in full crisis management mode, Sofia agreed. But they're fighting a losing battle against the videos. Every major news outlet is running the story. Jamal's phone rang, Jason Torres from the FAA again. Dr. Washington, I wanted to update you personally. Our investigation has expanded significantly. We've conducted interviews with all passengers and crew members, and we're reviewing the aircraft's communication logs. The discrepancies between the flight attendant's report and witness accounts are substantial. Meaning she lied, Jamal stated flatly. I cannot officially characterize it that way at this stage of the investigation, Torres replied carefully. But I can tell you that we're taking this extremely seriously. There appear to be multiple violations of FAA regulations regarding medical accommodations, as well as issues with the crew's emergency response protocols. What happens next? The aircraft remains grounded. All crew members have been removed from duty pending our findings. And Torres paused. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division has requested our preliminary data. This was significant news. DOJ involvement meant the incident was being treated as a potential civil rights violation at the federal level. Thank you for the update, Jamal said. My focus right now is on my mother's recovery, but I'm committed to seeing this through. Understood. One more thing, Dr. Washington, we've received reports of similar incidents on other Delta Air Express flights. Your case has prompted others to come forward. After ending the call, Jamal shared the information with Sophia, who was already typing notes on her tablet. This strengthens our position significantly, she said. If there's a pattern of discriminatory behavior, the airline's liability increases exponentially. A nurse appeared at the door. Dr. Washington. There's a woman here who says she was on your flight yesterday. And Emily Parker. She's asking to see you and your mother. Jamal remembered the nurse who had come to their aid on the plane. Yes, please let her in. Emily Parker entered hesitantly, carrying a small bouquet of flowers. She was in her early 40s, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and kind eyes that showed concern. Dr. Washington, I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to check on your mother and offer my support. Not at all, Jamal said, extending his hand. Thank you for what you did on the flight. Your intervention made a difference. Emily approached Beatrice's bedside, her experienced nurse's eyes assessing the monitors and 4 lines. How is she doing? Stable, but she sustained some heart damage due to the delayed treatment, Jamal explained. We're monitoring her closely. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened, Emily said, placing the flowers on the bedside table. I've been a nurse for 15 years, and I've never seen such blatant disregard for a medical emergency. The way that flight attendant behaved. She shook her head in disbelief. I gave a full statement to the FAA, she continued. I made it clear that your mother's life was endangered by the flight attendant's actions, and that you acted professionally throughout the entire incident. Thank you, Jamal said sincerely. Your testimony as a medical professional carries significant weight. Emily's expression turned determined. I've also spoken to several news outlets. CNN interviewed me this morning. I hope that's okay. I felt people needed to know the truth. More than okay, Jamal assured her. The truth is exactly what's needed here. Their conversation was interrupted by Jamal's phone ringing again, this time a number he didn't recognize. Dr. Washington. This is Secretary Maria Alvarez, Department of Transportation. Do you have a moment to speak? Jamal exchanged surprised glances with Sophia. The involvement of a cabinet secretary indicated the incident had reached the highest levels of government. Yes, Madam Secretary. I appreciate you calling. Dr. Washington, first let me express my personal concern for your mother's well-being. What happened on that flight is deeply troubling. Thank you, Secretary Alvarez. I want to assure you that my department is taking this matter extremely seriously. We've initiated a comprehensive review of Delta Air Express's compliance with anti-discrimination regulations and medical accommodation policies. The incident involving your mother appears to be part of a broader pattern that warrants thorough investigation. I appreciate that, Madam Secretary. My primary concern is ensuring this doesn't happen to other passengers. That's our concern as well. We've established a direct channel with the Civil Rights Division at Justice to coordinate our approach. I'd like to arrange a time for you to speak with our investigators, at your convenience of course. After the call ended, Sophia looked at Jamal with new respect. Cabinet secretaries don't personally call citizens unless something major is happening. This has escalated beyond anything I anticipated. Emily Parker, who had witnessed the call, appeared impressed. You're really fighting this all the way, aren't you? I have to, Jamal replied simply. For my mother, and for everyone who's faced discrimination but didn't have the resources or platform to fight back. Throughout the day, the story continued to gain momentum. #Justice for Beatrice trended nationally, with civil rights organizations, medical associations, and celebrities weighing in. Delta Air Express's stock price plummeted as investors reacted to the negative publicity and potential regulatory consequences. By evening, Jamal's attorney had received a new settlement offer from the airline, triple the original amount, still with a non-disclosure agreement. They're getting desperate, Sophia observed. This kind of public relations disaster can sink an airline. My answer remains the same, Jamal said firmly. No settlement with an NDA. This isn't about money. That night, as Jamal maintained his vigil by his mother's bedside, he received another unexpected call, from Andre Johnson, the airport police officer who had helped him. Dr. Washington, I thought you should know. Internal Affairs is reviewing our handling of the incident yesterday. The officers who tried to detain you instead of helping your mother are facing disciplinary action. That's good to hear, Jamal said. Your help made a difference, Andre. There's something else, Andre continued, his voice dropping lower. I've been documenting discriminatory practices at the airport for months. Incidents where passengers of color were treated differently than white passengers. Your case has created an opening for this information to finally be taken seriously. The implications were significant, not just one flight attendant or one airline, but potentially systemic issues across the air travel industry. Send everything you have to my attorney, Jamal advised. This is bigger than just what happened to my mother. As midnight approached, Jamal checked his email one last time before trying to get some rest in the uncomfortable hospital chair. A new message from Jason Torres contained the preliminary findings of the FAA investigation. The report detailed multiple violations: 1. Improper confiscation of medically necessary items. 2. Failure to follow Air Carrier Access Act requirements. 3. Inaccurate reporting of passenger behavior. 4. Delayed response to a medical emergency. 5. Failure to arrange appropriate medical assistance upon landing. Most damning of all, the report included statements from other crew members contradicting Tiffany Bennett's account of the incident. The flight's second officer had admitted that Tiffany had made disparaging comments about Jamal and Beatrice before the conflict even began. The grounding of Flight 2187 had evolved into something much larger, a comprehensive examination of discriminatory practices in air travel and the potentially deadly consequences of such discrimination. What had started as one flight attendant's prejudiced actions had exposed systemic failures that could no longer be ignored. As Jamal finally allowed himself to close his eyes, exhausted from the day's events, he knew that the real battle was just beginning. The airline would fight back harder as the stakes increased. Corporate lawyers would work to minimize liability. PR teams would craft narratives to shift blame. But for the first time in his life, Jamal felt the full weight of public attention supporting his fight for justice. The truth was out there, captured on dozens of videos and confirmed by multiple witnesses. His mother's suffering would not be in vain. The entire flight had been grounded, both literally and figuratively. Now it was time to ensure that the system itself changed for the better. By the next morning, the story had exploded beyond anything Jamal could have anticipated. #Flight Attendant Almost Killed had replaced #Justice for Beatrice as the top trending hashtag, with millions of shares across social media platforms. Every major news network was covering the story. CNN had dedicated a special segment titled Discrimination at 30,000 Feet, featuring interviews with passengers from the flight, including Emily Parker, whose clinical description of Beatrice's medical crisis and the flight crew's negligent response had proven particularly damning. As a medical professional, I can state unequivocally that the delay in treatment directly contributed to the deterioration of Mrs. Washington's condition, Emily had told the interviewer. And the most disturbing part was watching the flight attendant deliberately ignore Dr. Washington's credentials and expertise when he identified himself as a cardiologist. Jamal watched the coverage on the small television in his mother's hospital room, conflicted about the public attention but grateful for the support. Beatrice's condition had stabilized enough that the medical team was preparing her for transport back to Chicago later that day. "You've started quite the movement, baby," Beatrice said weakly from her bed, gesturing toward the television. "That wasn't my intention," Jamal replied. "I just wanted to hold them accountable for what they did to you." "Sometimes that's how movements begin," his mother observed with the wisdom of someone who had lived through the civil rights era. One person standing up and saying, "Enough." Sofia Rodriguez arrived with coffee and a folder full of documents. "I hope you're ready for this," she said, settling into a chair. "Things have escalated significantly overnight." She opened the folder to reveal printouts of news articles, legal correspondences, and social media statistics. Delta Air Express stock has dropped 15% since market opening. Their CEO, William Parker, issued a statement at 6 this morning. Jamal took the offered printout. Parker's statement was carefully worded: corporate damage control. Delta Air Express is deeply concerned about the incident reported on Flight 2187. We take all allegations of discrimination extremely seriously. We have placed the involved employees on administrative leave and are cooperating fully with federal investigators. Our company has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind, and we are committed to ensuring all passengers receive respectful, professional service. Standard corporate non-apology, Jamal observed. Notice how they refer to allegations and an incident reported rather than acknowledging what actually happened. Exactly, Sophia agreed. They're still trying to control the narrative. But they're failing spectacularly. She pulled out another document. This leaked from inside the company this morning. It was an internal memo dated 6 months earlier, detailing a passenger complaint against Tiffany Bennett for unprofessional and potentially discriminatory behavior toward an African American family traveling with young children. The complaint had been reviewed and addressed through counseling, with no further action taken. So they knew, Jamal said, anger rising in his voice. They knew she had issues with black passengers and did nothing substantial about it. And there's more, Sophia continued. 3 other complaints have surfaced since your story broke. All involving passengers of color, all involving Tiffany Bennett, all handled internally with minimal consequences. The hospital room door opened, and Dr. Martinez entered with another physician. "Dr. Washington, this is Dr. Phillips from the Air Ambulance Service. We're ready to begin preparations for your mother's transport to Chicago." While the medical team reviewed Beatrice's condition and transport protocols, Jamal's phone rang with an unfamiliar Washington, D.C. number. "Dr. Washington. This is Representative James Wilson, Congressional Black Caucus. I hope I'm not disturbing you at a difficult time." "Not at all, Congressman. I appreciate the call. I wanted to inform you personally that the House Transportation Committee is planning hearings on discrimination in air travel, inspired in large part by what happened to your mother. We would be honored if you would consider testifying once she's recovered enough for you to leave her side." "I would be willing to testify," Jamal replied without hesitation. "This issue deserves congressional attention." "Excellent. My office will be in touch to arrange the details. And please extend our best wishes to your mother for a speedy recovery." The morning continued with a flurry of activity, medical preparations for Beatrice's transport, calls from journalists seeking comments, and updates from the various investigations now underway. Around noon, Sophia received an email that made her eyebrows rise nearly to her hairline. "You're not going to believe this," she said, turning her tablet for Jamal to see. It was another leaked document, an email from Delta Air Express CEO William Parker to the company's board of directors, sent the previous evening. "The Washington incident represents a potentially existential threat to our brand and market position. Initial damage assessments suggest litigation exposure in the 8-figure range, before considering potential regulatory penalties and long-term brand damage. Our crisis management team recommends immediate settlement with the most generous terms necessary to secure an NDA. We cannot afford to have this story in the public eye any longer than absolutely necessary." "They're in full panic mode," Sophia observed. "And they should be. This is corporate negligence at its worst." As the day progressed, more revelations emerged. A flight attendant who had worked with Tiffany Bennett anonymously shared that Bennett had a reputation for treating passengers of color differently, with comments and behaviors that made some crew members uncomfortable. Captain Thomas Reynolds's record came under scrutiny as well, with previous incidents where he had backed crew members' accounts over passenger complaints, particularly when those complaints came from minority passengers. By mid-afternoon, Beatrice was deemed stable enough for transport. As the air ambulance team prepared her for the journey, Jamal received another call, this time from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. "Dr. Washington, this is Attorney Lydia Ortiz from DOJ Civil Rights. I'm calling to inform you that we've opened a formal investigation into potential violations of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act by Delta Air Express. We believe your mother's case represents a clear example of discriminatory service provision based on race." "I appreciate that," Jamal replied. "What does that investigation entail?" "We'll be examining the airline's policies, training procedures, complaint history, and response patterns. If violations are found, penalties could include substantial fines and mandated reforms. We may need your testimony as the investigation proceeds." "You'll have my full cooperation," Jamal assured her. As Beatrice was wheeled toward the elevator that would take her to the waiting air ambulance, she reached for Jamal's hand. "Baby, I know you're fighting this battle for me, and I'm proud of you. But remember, this isn't just about what happened to one old lady on one flight. This is about all the people who face this kind of treatment every day without cameras recording it, without a doctor for a son, without the resources to fight back." Jamal squeezed his mother's hand gently. "I know, Mom. That's exactly why I'm not accepting their settlement offers." "Good boy," Beatrice smiled weakly. "Some things are more important than money." The air ambulance journey to Chicago proceeded without incident. Upon arrival at Chicago Memorial Hospital, Beatrice was immediately taken to the cardiac care unit, where Jamal's colleagues had prepared a comprehensive treatment plan. "The damage to her heart is significant, Dr. Lisa Chen, the attending cardiologist, informed Jamal after completing her initial assessment. "We're looking at approximately 30% reduction in function. At her age, that's concerning." The reality of what had happened, what had been done to his mother through discrimination and negligence, hit Jamal anew. This wasn't just about embarrassment or inconvenience or even civil rights in the abstract. His mother's life had been permanently altered, her health compromised, her remaining years potentially shortened. As evening fell over Chicago, Jamal stepped out of the hospital briefly to get some fresh air. His phone buzzed with a notification. Delta Air Express had issued another statement, this one markedly different from the first. After preliminary internal investigation, Delta Air Express acknowledges that the handling of a medical situation on Flight 2187 fell far short of our standards and values. We have terminated the employment of the flight attendant involved and have placed the flight captain on extended administrative leave pending further review. We are reaching out to the Washington family to offer our sincere apologies and appropriate compensation for their ordeal. Additionally, we are implementing immediate enhanced training for all staff regarding medical accommodations and anti-discrimination practices. The statement represented a significant shift, from dismissing alleged discrimination to acknowledging wrongdoing and taking concrete action. But it came too late to undo the damage to Beatrice's heart, and too late to prevent the media storm, federal investigations, and public outrage. Jamal's phone rang again, Sofia Rodriguez with more news. "The airline's lawyers have made another offer," she said. "Triple the last one. No NDA this time. They've finally realized that horse has left the barn." "What do you think?" Jamal asked. "It's substantial," Sofia admitted. "Enough to cover all medical expenses, compensate for pain and suffering, and then some. But it doesn't address the systemic issues. It doesn't guarantee changes to prevent this from happening to someone else." Jamal thought about his mother's words, about all the people who face discrimination without the resources to fight back. "Tell them we're not interested in a purely monetary settlement," he decided. "Any agreement must include structural changes to their policies, training, and accountability systems. And those changes must be publicly disclosed and verified by independent auditors." "They won't like that," Sofia warned. "Then we continue with the lawsuit and cooperate fully with the federal investigations," Jamal replied firmly. "Some things are more important than money." As he ended the call, Jamal looked up at the hospital where his mother was fighting to recover from an entirely preventable medical crisis. The media storm and corporate panic were just the beginning. The real work, changing a system that allowed such discrimination to flourish, was still ahead. 2 weeks after the incident on Flight 2187, Jamal Washington sat in a conference room at the Department of Transportation headquarters in Washington, D.C. Beside him, Sofia Rodriguez arranged documents on the polished table while they waited for the officials to arrive. "How's your mother doing today?" Sofia asked. "Stable, but still weak," Jamal replied. "The damage to her heart was significant. She's on the transplant list now." The words still felt surreal. Before the flight, Beatrice had been managing her condition effectively with medication. Now, because of one flight attendant's discriminatory actions, she needed a new heart entirely. The door opened, and Secretary Maria Alvarez entered with a team of officials from the DOT, FAA, and Department of Justice. "Dr. Washington, thank you for coming," Secretary Alvarez said, extending her hand. "I understand this is a difficult time for your family." "Thank you for taking this matter seriously," Jamal replied. The meeting lasted 3 hours, with Jamal recounting every detail of the incident and answering questions about his observations of discriminatory treatment. The officials shared preliminary findings from their investigations, which had expanded significantly beyond the single incident. "We've interviewed 78 current and former Delta Air Express employees," said Robert Chen, the lead DOT investigator. "The pattern of discriminatory practices appears to be systemic rather than isolated. Flight attendant Bennett's actions on your flight represent an extreme example, but not an isolated one." "What happens next?" Jamal asked. "We're pursuing a two-track approach," Secretary Alvarez explained. "First, specific enforcement actions against the airline and individuals involved in your case. Second, broader regulatory reforms to address discrimination across the industry." As the meeting concluded, Jason Torres from the FAA pulled Jamal aside. "I thought you should know," the captain from your flight, Thomas Reynolds, admitted in his deposition that he never actually verified the flight attendant's claims about your behavior. He took her word at face value, despite contradictory reports from other crew members. "That doesn't surprise me," Jamal said. "Discrimination thrives when people in authority don't question it." From the DOT, Jamal and Sofia proceeded to Capitol Hill for a meeting with congressional staff preparing for the upcoming hearings on discrimination in air travel. "Your testimony will be crucial," explained Legislative Director Amara Johnson. "You bring both the personal experience and the professional expertise to make this issue resonate across party lines." Meanwhile, Delta Air Express continued its desperate attempts at damage control. The airline had appointed a new CEO, Michelle Garcia, who had immediately announced a comprehensive overhaul of the company's training and accountability systems. "Too little, too late," Sofia commented as they left the Capitol. Their stock is down 23%, they're facing multiple federal investigations, and the class action lawsuit now includes 64 plaintiffs with similar experiences of discrimination. Jamal's phone rang, the transplant coordinator from Chicago Memorial. Dr. Washington, we've updated your mother's status on the transplant list based on her latest tests. I'm afraid the damage is progressing faster than we'd hoped. The news hit hard. Despite the best medical care available, Beatrice's heart was failing more rapidly than expected, a direct consequence of the delayed treatment on the flight. I'll fly back tonight, Jamal decided immediately. That evening, as his plane prepared for takeoff from Reagan National Airport, Jamal couldn't help but notice the difference in how he was treated. The flight attendant had recognized his name during boarding and had been almost excessively accommodating. Word had spread throughout the industry. During the flight, Jamal used the time to work on another project that had emerged from the crisis, the creation of a new advocacy organization focused on medical safety and anti-discrimination in transportation. With Emily Parker's help, he had already drafted proposed guidelines for airline staff training on medical accommodations. Upon landing in Chicago, Jamal went directly to the hospital. Beatrice was awake, watching news coverage of the continuing fallout from the incident. "Look at that," she said, pointing to the television. "They're calling it the Washington Standard now." On screen, a news anchor was explaining how multiple airlines had announced new policies for handling medical accommodations, collectively dubbed the Washington Standard by industry observers. Delta Air Express's competitors are seizing the opportunity to distinguish themselves, the anchor explained. American Airlines, United, and Southwest have all unveiled enhanced training programs and explicit anti-discrimination policies in medical emergencies, with clear accountability measures for violations. Jamal took his mother's hand. "How are you feeling today?" "Tired, baby. So tired." Beatrice's voice was weaker than before, her skin ashen. "But proud. So proud of what you're doing." Dr. Chen entered with Beatrice's latest test results. After reviewing them, she motioned for Jamal to step outside. "The deterioration is accelerating," she said quietly. "Without a transplant in the next 2 to 3 weeks." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Jamal understood the prognosis all too well. "Move her to status 1A on the list," he said. "I'll sign off on the override." "Already done," Dr. Chen assured him. "Everyone here understands the situation." That night, Jamal slept in the chair beside his mother's bed, waking frequently to check her monitors. Around 3 in the morning, his phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. DOJ just announced criminal charges against Tiffany Bennett for reckless endangerment and civil rights violations. Captain Reynolds facing professional negligence charges. Press conference tomorrow at 9 a.m. The news should have felt like victory, but as Jamal looked at his mother's fragile form, it seemed hollow. No criminal charges could undo the damage to her heart. Over the next week, developments continued at a rapid pace. The congressional hearings began, with emotional testimony from passengers who had witnessed the incident. Emily Parker's clinical description of Beatrice's medical crisis and the flight crew's negligent response proved particularly powerful. Jamal split his time between his mother's bedside and video conferences with investigators, attorneys, and advocacy groups. The case had become a rallying point for discussions about the intersection of racial discrimination and medical safety. 10 days after returning to Chicago, Jamal received a call that changed everything. "Dr. Washington. This is Dr. Patel from the transplant coordination team. We have a heart. It's a good match for your mother." The transplant surgery lasted 6 hours. Dr. Ramirez, the top cardiac surgeon at Chicago Memorial, performed the procedure himself. "She's strong," he told Jamal afterward. "The new heart is functioning well. The next 48 hours are critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic." As Beatrice recovered in the ICU, Sophia arrived with news from Washington. The Transportation Committee just unanimously approved the first draft of the Air Travelers Medical Rights Act, she reported. They're informally calling it the Beatrice Washington Act. It mandates specific protocols for handling passenger medical needs and creates new enforcement mechanisms for discrimination cases. Jamal nodded, grateful but focused on his mother's recovery. Has there been any response from Delta Air Express? Their new CEO has requested a meeting with you and Beatrice, when she's well enough. No lawyers, no PR team. Just a direct conversation. I'll consider it, Jamal said. But only after Mom is stable. 3 days later, Beatrice opened her eyes, her new heart beating steadily. Her first words were, "Did they change the rules yet, baby?" Jamal smiled through tears. "Yes, Mom. They're changing the rules because of you." As Beatrice grew stronger, the legal and regulatory processes continued. The class action lawsuit against Delta Air Express expanded to include over 100 plaintiffs with similar experiences of discrimination. The Department of Transportation imposed a record $42 million fine on the airline for systematic violations of civil rights protections and medical accommodation requirements. Most significantly, the FAA announced comprehensive new regulations for handling medical accommodations on flights, with clear penalties for noncompliance. A month after her transplant, Beatrice was strong enough to attend a private meeting with Michelle Garcia, Delta Air Express's new CEO. Mrs. Washington, Dr. Washington, Garcia began, "I want to personally apologize for what happened to you on our flight. There is no excuse for how you were treated." "You're right about that," Beatrice said simply. "We are implementing a complete overhaul of our training, policies, and accountability systems," Garcia continued. "But I didn't come here just to tell you about corporate changes. I came to listen and learn, if you're willing to share your thoughts." Beatrice straightened in her wheelchair. "Young lady, I've been a black woman in America for 76 years. I've seen discrimination in every form you can imagine. What happened to me on your airplane wasn't new, it was just caught on camera this time." Garcia nodded, listening intently. "If you want real change," Beatrice continued, "you need to understand that policies and training are just the beginning. You need a culture where people feel safe speaking up when they see something wrong. Your flight attendant didn't act alone, others saw what was happening and stayed silent. That's exactly the insight we need," Garcia acknowledged. "Would you be willing to consult with us as we develop our new approach?" Jamal expected his mother to decline, but Beatrice surprised him. "Yes," she said firmly. "Because this isn't just about one airline or one incident. This is about changing how people think about discrimination in all its forms. Sometimes the best way to make change is from the inside." 2 months after the incident on Flight 2187, Jamal stood before the House Transportation Committee, delivering his testimony on the need for the Air Travelers Medical Rights Act. "My mother nearly died because a flight attendant saw her blackness before seeing her humanity," he told the packed chamber. "This isn't just about one incident or one airline. It's about recognizing that discrimination in medical contexts can be deadly, and creating systems that protect all passengers regardless of race." The bill passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, a rare moment of unity in a divided Congress. President Rivera signed it into law a week later, with Beatrice Washington as the guest of honor at the ceremony. As for Tiffany Bennett and Captain Reynolds, the legal system took its course. Bennett was convicted of reckless endangerment and civil rights violations, receiving a 3-year suspended sentence and community service. Reynolds lost his pilot's license and faced professional negligence charges that were ultimately resolved through a plea agreement. The incident that began with a flight attendant throwing away an elderly black woman's medicine had transformed into a national movement for accountability and change in how airlines treat passengers with medical needs. And it all started because one son refused to let his mother's mistreatment go unchallenged. 6 months after the incident that changed air travel forever, Beatrice Washington stood before the Senate Commerce Committee, her new heart beating strongly in her chest. At 77, she carried herself with the dignity of someone who had faced discrimination her entire life but never allowed it to diminish her spirit. "Senators, I am not here today as a victim," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I am here as a witness to what happens when discrimination intersects with medical care. What happened to me on that flight nearly cost me my life. But the real tragedy would be if we failed to learn from it." The committee members listened attentively as Beatrice detailed not just her experience on Flight 2187, but a lifetime of similar, if less dramatic, encounters with prejudice in healthcare settings. The Beatrice Washington Air Travelers' Rights Act was an important first step, she acknowledged. But today I'm asking you to consider its expansion to cover all forms of public transportation and to strengthen the enforcement mechanisms for existing medical discrimination laws. In the audience, Jamal watched his mother with pride. Her recovery had been remarkable, not just physically from the heart transplant, but emotionally from the trauma of the incident. She had transformed her ordeal into purpose, becoming an eloquent advocate for change. After the hearing, reporters swarmed them in the hallway outside the committee room. "Dr. Washington, how do you respond to the announcement that Tiffany Bennett is appealing her conviction? Mrs. Washington, what do you think about Delta Air Express's new training program being adopted industry-wide?" Jamal stepped forward to shield his mother from the press crush. "We'll be issuing a statement later today. Right now, my mother needs to rest." As they made their way to the waiting car, Emily Parker joined them, now serving as the director of training for the medical advocacy organization Jamal had founded, Travelers Medical Equity Initiative. "Your testimony was powerful, Mrs. Washington," Emily said. The senators were clearly moved. "Let's hope they're moved enough to actually do something," Beatrice replied pragmatically. The driver held the door as Beatrice was carefully helped into the vehicle. Her health had improved dramatically since the transplant, but she still tired easily and required regular medical monitoring. "Where to next?" the driver asked. "The hotel," Jamal replied. "Mom needs to rest before the evening reception." As they drove through Washington, D.C., Beatrice gazed out at the monuments passing by. "You know, Jamal, I never expected to become the face of a movement at my age. You've always been a force for change, Mom. Remember when you integrated that school district back in the 80s? This is just on a bigger stage." She patted his hand affectionately. "And with a better son to help me navigate it." The evening reception at the National Air and Space Museum honored the advocates and lawmakers who had championed the Beatrice Washington Act. Transportation industry leaders mingled with civil rights attorneys, medical professionals, and government officials. Delta Air Express CEO Michelle Garcia approached Beatrice with respect. "Mrs. Washington, I wanted to update you personally on our progress. The comprehensive bias training program you helped design has now been implemented across our entire workforce. Early feedback has been overwhelmingly positive." "That's good to hear," Beatrice acknowledged. "And the accountability metrics we discussed? In place and publishing quarterly. Transparency has been key to rebuilding trust." Across the room, Jamal was engaged in conversation with Jason Torres from the FAA and Andre Johnson, who had been promoted to Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the Cincinnati Airport Authority after his role in exposing discriminatory practices. "The industry-wide changes have been remarkable," Torres was saying. "Every major airline has revamped their medical accommodation policies. Crew training now includes specific modules on implicit bias and medical emergency response. Complaint resolution has been overhauled. And most importantly," Andre added, "people are speaking up when they see problems. The culture is shifting." Later that evening, Jamal and Beatrice returned to their hotel suite, both exhausted but satisfied with the day's events. "There's something I haven't told you yet," Jamal said as he helped his mother with her medication. "I've been offered the position of Chief Medical Officer at the Department of Transportation. They want me to oversee the implementation of medical safety standards across all transportation sectors." Beatrice's face lit up. "Baby, that's wonderful. Are you going to take it?" Jamal hesitated. "I'm considering it. It would mean taking a leave from Chicago Memorial, moving to D.C. But the opportunity to shape policy at the national level is compelling. You should do it, Beatrice said without hesitation. This is important work, Jamal. And you're uniquely qualified, both as a doctor and as someone who's seen firsthand what happens when the system fails. 2 weeks later, they returned to Chicago to pack up Jamal's apartment. He had accepted the DOT position, with the condition that he could maintain clinical privileges at a DC hospital to keep his medical skills sharp. Beatrice would move with him, her medical care transferring to specialists at Johns Hopkins. The transition was bittersweet, leaving behind colleagues and friends, but moving toward a new chapter with meaningful purpose. Before leaving Chicago, Jamal had one last flight to take, a short hop to Minneapolis for a medical conference where he would deliver the keynote address on healthcare discrimination. Despite everything that had happened, air travel remained a necessity. At O'Hare International Airport, Jamal and Beatrice approached the check-in counter with a familiar mixture of anxiety and determination. The agent recognized them immediately. "Dr. and Mrs. Washington, welcome. We have you in first class, and I've noted the medical accommodation for Mrs. Washington's medication bag. A supervisor will escort you to ensure everything goes smoothly." The supervisor who appeared was a young black woman with a professional demeanor and a warm smile. "I'm Letitia Jackson, Customer Experience Manager. It's an honor to assist you today." As they made their way through security and to the gate, Jamal noticed subtle but significant changes in how things operated. Medical accommodation tags were prominent on eligible items. Staff asked appropriate questions about passenger needs. The atmosphere felt more attentive, more human. Boarding proceeded smoothly, with Letitia personally ensuring that Beatrice was comfortably settled and her medication bag properly placed for easy access. "Ms. Jackson, thank you for your assistance," Jamal said as they prepared for departure. "It's my job, Dr. Washington," she replied. Then, lowering her voice slightly, she added, "And between us, I was Tiffany Bennett's replacement. I was fired from another airline last year after reporting similar discrimination by a colleague. I was afraid to speak up again until your case made headlines." The revelation startled both Washingtons. Letitia continued, "What you did didn't just change policies, it gave people like me the courage to stand up for what's right. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to complete the pre-flight checks." As the plane taxied for takeoff, Beatrice took her son's hand. "That's the real victory, you know. Not the lawsuits or the legislation or even my new heart. It's changing how people think and act, one person at a time." Jamal nodded, watching the ground fall away as they ascended into the clouds. What had begun as a nightmare at 30,000 feet had transformed into a new normal, one where discrimination was challenged, accountability expected, and change possible. The flight attendant's casual cruelty in throwing away an elderly black woman's medicine had intended to put Beatrice Washington in her place. Instead, it had launched a movement that ensured her place in history as the catalyst for long overdue reforms. As their plane cruised smoothly toward Minneapolis, Jamal reflected on the journey that had brought them here, not just the physical distance traveled, but the societal shifts they had helped create. There was still much work to be done, many battles to fight, many minds to change. But for the first time, he felt the winds of justice truly taking flight. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more accounts of people standing up against discrimination. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly because of their race? How did you respond? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about standing up for what's right, please share this video with them. Together, we can create a world where people like Beatrice Washington receive the respect and care they deserve, regardless of the color of their skin. Thank you for listening to this important story, and remember, one person's courage can change an entire system. This powerful story teaches us that discrimination isn't just offensive, it can be deadly. When Tiffany Bennett threw away Beatrice's medication, she didn't just violate policy, she demonstrated how prejudice can threaten lives. Washington's refusal to accept this injustice shows us that sometimes fighting back is necessary, especially when systems fail those they should protect. The real power lies not in accepting settlement money but in demanding structural change. Beatrice and Jamal transformed personal trauma into national reform by rejecting quick fixes and insisting on genuine accountability. They understood that true justice means preventing future harm. We also learn the importance of allies like Emily Parker and Andre Johnson, who risked their positions to support truth. Their courage reminds us that bystanders have power. Speaking up in moments of injustice can literally save lives. Perhaps most importantly, this story demonstrates that one person's stand can spark a movement. What began as a single act of discrimination on a routine flight culminated in legislation, corporate reform, and cultural change. The Washington Standard became reality because one son refused to let his mother's dignity be compromised. When facing discrimination, document everything, know your rights, find allies, and never underestimate your power to create lasting change.